the Gulf War. Let's talk about Saddam Hussein, George Bush's best bud and trading partner, who was later rebranded as a tyrant dictator once he'd outlived his usefulness to the US. Iraq had an organized Iraqi Democratic Opposition that was demanding for parliamentary democracy in Iraq. Bush totally ignored them when they sought him out in Washington. All the opposition wanted was a peaceful resolution that they knew could work. That wasn't a good deal for the US, and so they were out. The media similarly ignored them. Chomsky says, quote, "You can't find a word. It's not that they're inarticulate. They have statements, proposals, calls, and demands. If you look at them, you find that they're indistinguishable from those of the American peace movement. They're against Saddam Hussein, and they're against the war in Iraq. They don't want their country destroyed. What they want is a peaceful resolution, and they knew perfectly well that it might have been achievable. That's the wrong view, and therefore they're out. We don't hear a word about the Iraqi Democratic Opposition. This is a spectacular achievement of propaganda. First, that the voices of the Iraqi Democrats are completely excluded. And second, that nobody notices it. That's interesting too." End quote. The reasons the US gave for the war are, quote, "Aggressors cannot be rewarded, and aggression must be reversed by the quick resort to violence." End quote. Let's see how well the US has held to this "aggressors cannot be rewarded" principle. If you guessed not well, you're right. Has the United States opposed its own aggression in Panama and insisted on bombing Washington to reverse it? When the South African occupation in Namibia was declared illegal in 1969, did the United States impose sanctions on food and medicine? Did it go to war? Did it bomb Cape Town? No. It carried out 20 years of quiet diplomacy, with ample rewards throughout for the aggressors. Chomsky concludes, quote, "Again, it's child's play to demonstrate that those couldn't possibly have been the reasons for going to war, because we don't uphold these principles. But nobody did it. That's what's important, and nobody bothered to point out the conclusion that follows, which is no reason was given for going to war. None. No reason was given for going to war that could not be refuted by a literate teenager in about 2 minutes." That, again, is the hallmark of a totalitarian culture. It ought to frighten us that we are so deeply totalitarian that we can be driven to war without any reason being given for it, and without anybody noticing Lebanon's request or caring. It's a very striking fact. End quote. Before the bombing started, a poll was conducted, and people were asked if they'd be in favor of Iraq withdrawing from Kuwait in return for the Security Council's consideration of the Arab-Israeli conflict. 2/3 of Americans were in favor of that. The Iraqi Democratic Opposition was also in favor of that. Yet people who said that thought they were the only ones who felt that way, and the media certainly didn't give the impression that it would be a good idea. So people assumed it was just them. We underestimate how many of our cues we pick from the media. The media also didn't report that this was an offer that Iraq had made to prevent the invasion. The only hindrance was America's refusal to negotiate since well before the invasion of Kuwait. What would have happened if people knew such an offer was on the table and that it was widely supported and was the rational choice for anyone interested in peace? This is proof of the success of propaganda, the fact that no one who answered the poll knew that there was such an offer, and so the war policy proceeded with no opposition. The success of propaganda is seen in the way that key questions were not asked, like, was there a way out in terms quite acceptable to the general population, the world at large, and the Iraqi Democratic Opposition? It didn't matter what proposals and demands the Iraqi population and the Iraqi Democratic Party had, and it was not discussed at all. This is crucial for a well-functioning propaganda system. This makes me think about Haiti, especially because Kenya police have been deployed there already. Has anyone asked everyday Haitians what solutions would be acceptable to them, what proposals they have, what they think the way forward is? No. The only ideas that count are those of the IMF and the World Bank and the American corporations and Haitian elite, if any? Who are we not hearing from? Whose voices, ideas, proposals are we not getting? Who is being silenced? The US did that thing of creating a monster we should all be afraid of in Saddam Hussein. This leader of a third world country without a military base was out to conquer the world, was a threat to the world, to America, which has military bases everywhere. Did anyone point out that Iraq was a third world country with a peasant military in the face of America? No. Chomsky says, quote, "It is now being considered that there was a ton of disinformation about the fortifications, the chemical weapons, etc. But did you find anybody who pointed it out? No, you found virtually nobody who pointed it out. That's typical," end quote. Here's what Chomsky says in closing out the book. Quote, "I think the issue, to come back to my original comment, is not simply disinformation and the Gulf crisis. The issue is much broader. It's whether we want to live in a free society or whether we want to live under what amounts to a form of self-imposed totalitarianism, with the bewildered herd marginalized, directed elsewhere, terrified, screaming patriotic slogans, fearing for their lives, and admiring with awe the leader who saved them from destruction, while the educated masses go step on command and repeat the slogans they're supposed to repeat, and the society deteriorates at home. That's the choice that you have to face. The answer to those questions is very much in the hands of people like you and me." So those are some of the key things that stood out for me from Noam Chomsky's Media Control, The Spectacular Achievements of Propaganda. What sticks with you most? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know. Yeah. I'll be putting out more of this type of content as I revisit old books and read new ones, just to remind myself things I learned and share new things I'm learning during these revolutionary times we're living through. Solidarity with all people all over the world in the struggle for justice. A luta continua. Victoria, etc. And what's the other one I learned? Vox Populi, Vox Dei. I think the voice of the people is the voice of God. And Viva, Viva, Viva. Until next time, guys, remember who you are. Love life. Love people. And stay lunatic. Bye.